The starship horizon cut through the dark like a silver needle threading the vast fabric of the universe. Space wasn't silent. Not really. The ship hummed with life, engines pulsing like a heartbeat, while distant pulsars murmured across the void. Jack Mercer leaned against the corridor wall, nursing a cup of something that was technically labeled coffee, though it tasted more like warm battery acid. The Terran Exploration Corps wasn't known for its luxury beverages. He stared out the narrow viewport at the purple swirl of a nearby nebula. It was beautiful, sure, but he was getting tired of beautiful. Every sector they passed through had another gorgeous, deadly anomaly, or a breathtaking planet full of things that wanted to eat him. It was hard to appreciate the scenery when the scenery kept trying to kill you. "Commander Mercer," came a smooth, lilting voice behind him. Jack turned, suppressing a sigh. Lyra, the Alari ambassador, stood there radiating poise and elegance. She looked almost human. Almost. Her skin was paler, with an opalescent sheen that caught the light, and her ears were long and gracefully pointed, like some ancient elven queen from a fantasy novel. Her eyes, though, those were the kicker. They shimmered, changing colors with her mood. Right now, they hovered between deep blue and a hint of green, like the ocean before a storm. "Ambassador," he greeted, then immediately regretted how formal he sounded. Lyra wasn't exactly cold, but she wasn't easy to read either. She spoke like someone who measured every word twice before letting it leave her mouth. "I would like to review the next planet on our route," she said, voice even. "Your pilot mentioned a gas giant with moons suitable for resource extraction. My people will want details." Jack smirked. "Yeah, Davis described it as big, round, and super gassy. I'm sure the Alari Council will love that analysis." Lyra blinked, her head tilting slightly in that way she did when she wasn't sure if he was joking or just an idiot. "A thorough report would be appreciated." Jack took a sip of his questionable coffee and grimaced. "Sure thing. Anything else?" She hesitated. He noticed it, a rare crack in her polished composure. "Is there a reason you avoid speaking to me outside of mission briefings?" she asked, her voice quieter now. Jack blinked, caught off guard. "Avoid you? No, I'm not avoiding you. I'm just giving you space. You know, professional distance. You're an ambassador and well, not..." Her eyes shifted, swirling into a faint silver hue. He didn't know what that meant, but it didn't look encouraging. "I am here to understand humans," Lyra said carefully, "not to be placed at a distance from them." Jack wasn't sure what to say to that. He wasn't great with feelings, his or anyone else's, and Lyra seemed to have feelings tucked away behind a reinforced diplomatic firewall. So naturally, he defaulted to sarcasm. "Well, if you wanted to understand humans, Ambassador, you're on the wrong ship. We're not exactly the best of the species." He waved a hand vaguely. "We're more like the awkward, disappointing cousins no one invites to holidays." Lyra blinked again. Then, to his surprise, the corner of her mouth twitched upward. Not quite a smile, but close. "I find that unlikely," she said softly. Jack chuckled despite himself. "Yeah, well, give it time." They stood there in an almost comfortable silence for a moment. Jack glanced at her, wondering how someone could look so alien and yet familiar. He didn't know much about the Alari, but Lyra was different from most diplomats he'd met. She wasn't condescending or aloof, just distant in a way that felt more like habit than intention. Before he could think too hard about it, the intercom crackled to life. "Commander Mercer, please report to the bridge." Davis tried to argue with the navigation AI again, and now it's quoting philosophy at him. Jack sighed. "Of course it is." He glanced at Lyra, who raised a delicate brow. "Your crew appears unconventional." "Yeah, that's a nice word for it," Jack said with a grin. "Unconventional. Let's go with that." As they walked to the bridge, Jack felt the tension in his shoulders ease a little. Maybe Lyra wasn't as impossible to talk to as he thought. When they stepped onto the bridge, Davis was mid-argument with the ship's AI, Alfred. "I'm just saying you can't calculate fuel efficiency based on theoretical metaphysics." Davis was gesturing wildly at the interface. "That's like planning dinner based on an existential crisis." The AI's voice, smooth and just a little smug, responded calmly. The nature of existence affects all things, including travel velocity. You assume the universe is static. It is not. Therefore, your argument is flawed. Jack pinched the bridge of his nose. Alfred, stop bullying the pilot. I am not bullying. I am enlightening. You're enlightening him into an aneurysm, Jack muttered, then looked at Davis. Just reset the calculations manually. Davis threw up his hands. Oh, sure. I'll just eyeball it like some ancient sea captain. Maybe I'll use the stars while I'm at it. Jack shot him a look. If you start wearing a tricorn hat, I'm transferring you to waste management. Lyra watched the exchange. Her head tilted again. Is this normal? She asked Jack quietly. He sighed. Pretty much. Welcome to humanity. She was quiet for a moment, then, to his surprise, her lips curved into a small, genuine smile. I think I am beginning to understand. Jack stared at her for a beat longer than he should have. She really was beautiful, in a way that felt unfair to the rest of the universe. The words slipped out before he could stop them. You look beautiful today, Lyra. Her smile froze. Her eyes widened, swirling from silver to bright, startled gold. For the first time since she came aboard, she looked genuinely, utterly speechless. Then without a word, she turned and practically fled the bridge. Jack blinked after her. What did I say? Davis snorted. Smooth, Commander. Real smooth. Jack groaned. I'm going to regret that, aren't I? Probability suggests yes. The AI chimed in helpfully. Jack slumped into his chair. Fantastic. The air in the mess hall felt heavier than usual. Or maybe that was just Jack's imagination. He poked at his plate of something that claimed to be protein stew, but had the consistency of old engine grease. Across from him, Davis was thoroughly enjoying his sandwich, which Jack suspected was made from the same questionable material, but cleverly disguised with extra condiments. So, any sign of Lyra yet? Jack asked, not even trying to sound casual. Davis grinned, crumbs sticking to his chin. Oh, she's around. Saw her earlier, actually. Jack perked up despite himself. Yeah? What did she say? Davis leaned back in his chair with an exaggerated sigh. Well, first she said good morning, and then she didn't flee in terror, so I'd call that progress. Jack groaned, dropping his head into his hands. Great. I'm the guy who made an alien diplomat too uncomfortable to stay in the same room as me. That's probably a new record for humanity. Don't sell yourself short, Commander. I'm sure someone else out there offended an alien species faster, probably by sneezing on them or something. Davis paused. Still, though, you basically proposed. Not bad for a first date. Jack shot him a look. It wasn't a date. Davis shrugged. Didn't stop you from popping the question. Before Jack could respond, the mess hall door hissed open. Lyra walked in, her steps measured and composed as always. But her eyes flicked toward Jack, then away just as quickly, her expression unreadable. The swirling silver of her irises had deepened to a muted gray. He didn't know what that meant, but it didn't seem good. Commander Mercer, she said, voice polite but distant, I need to speak with you, privately. Davis coughed into his sandwich, barely suppressing a laugh. Jack shot him a glare before rising to follow her out into the corridor. She led him to a quieter part of the ship near the observation deck, where the vast expanse of space spread out before them. The stars drifted by lazily, distant suns painting soft trails of light across the viewport. Lyra stood in silence for a moment, her hands clasped behind her back. Lyra, listen, Jack started awkwardly. About what I said. She cut him off, her voice steady. Do you understand what those words mean in Alari culture? Jack hesitated. Sort of. I got the lifelong bond part from Ortega after you, well, ran off. He rubbed the back of his neck. I didn't know. I wasn't trying to. I mean, it was just a compliment, a human thing. Lyra turned to him, her eyes narrowing slightly. Among my people, such words are sacred. To call someone beautiful, it is more than admiration. It is a declaration, a promise. It is not said lightly. Jack swallowed hard. Yeah, I figured that out. Look, I didn't mean to put you in a weird spot. I wasn't trying to declare anything. He paused, wincing. Though I guess it's a little late for that. She studied him for a long moment, and Jack felt like a bug under a microscope. Humans are strange, she said at last, her voice quieter now. You speak without considering the weight of your words. You feel first and think later. Jack huffed a laugh. Yeah, that sounds about right. He glanced at her. Is that why you avoided me all day? Thought I was trying to, what, claim you or something? Lyra's gaze flickered to him, something like amusement tugging at the corner of her mouth. It was more complicated than that. Jack tilted his head. Complicated how? She hesitated, then spoke slowly, as if choosing each word with care. I am an ambassador. I was chosen for my ability to remain impartial, to observe and understand. But you confuse me. Humans confuse me. Jack raised an eyebrow. Well, we are an acquired taste. Lyra actually smiled. A small, fleeting thing, but it was there. Jack felt an odd warmth in his chest, like he'd just stumbled onto a rare and precious artifact. Before he could say anything else, the ship jolted violently, alarms blaring to life. The lights flickered and Jack instinctively grabbed the railing. Bridge, report! He barked into his comm. Davis's voice came through, strained. We've got company, Commander. Unidentified vessel just dropped out of warp. They're hailing us, and, they've got guns. Jack muttered a curse under his breath. On my way. He glanced at Lyra. Looks like the heart-to-heart's gonna have to wait. Her expression hardened, diplomat's mask sliding back into place. Then let's deal with this interruption. They reached the bridge to find Davis frantically rerouting power to shields while Ortega monitored the approaching vessel. On the view screen, a jagged, rust-colored ship loomed, looking more like a scrap heap held together by spite and bad decisions. The comm crackled, and a voice rasped through the speakers. This is Captain Vorgath of the Blackthorn. Surrender your cargo and no one gets hurt. Jack exhaled slowly. Pirates. Great. Because today wasn't complicated enough. Davis glanced back. So, what's the plan, Commander? Diplomacy or explosions? Jack exchanged a look with Lyra. Her gaze was steady, unwavering. Let's start with diplomacy, Jack said, and keep explosions as a backup. Lyra nodded. Agreed. Though, with pirates, the distinction is often thin. Jack chuckled, despite the situation. Welcome to humanity. Lyra actually laughed, a quiet melodic sound that, for a moment, made Jack forget the looming threat entirely. Let's hope we survive long enough for me to finish understanding it, she said dryly. Jack grinned, settling into his command chair. Stick with me, Ambassador. I'll show you all the ways we mess things up. The pirate ship loomed closer. Jack's smile didn't fade. After all, he added with a smirk, we're unconventional. The pirate ship loomed on the view screen like a rusted predator, all jagged edges and bad intentions. It looked less like a vessel and more like someone had fed an asteroid into a blender, then slapped engines on the biggest chunk that survived. Jack leaned back in his chair, one boot propped against the console, projecting a confidence he absolutely did not feel. All right, he said, cracking his knuckles. Let's talk to Captain Scrap Heap. Davis glanced over. You sure you don't want to open with explosions? I feel like they're more our speed. Let's save the fireworks for later, Jack replied. Maybe we get lucky, and they're the friendly sort of space pirates. Ortega snorted from her station. Yeah, maybe they just want to sell us cookies. Jack grinned. Pirate scouts of the Andromeda sector? I hear the thin mints are to die for. The comm crackled again. This is Captain Vorgath. Surrender your cargo. Last chance. Jack tapped the console and leaned forward. This is Commander Jack Mercer of the Starship Horizon. Hi there, Captain Vorgath. I'd love to chat about cargo, but I seem to have misplaced our manifest. Maybe we could skip ahead to the part where you tell us what you actually want. There was a pause, then the voice returned, low and growling. All of it, Jack blinked. All of it? That's not a very specific number. Weapons, fuel, supplies, and the Alari. Lyra stiffened beside him, her voice ice cold. I am not cargo. See, that's where we agree, Jack said smoothly. Ambassador Lyra isn't part of any deal. And I hate to break it to you, but our weapons are more stubborn than our pilot. Davis raised a hand. Hey, compliment, Jack added without missing a beat. There was a longer pause on the other end now, the kind that made Jack's skin itch. He glanced at Lyra. She was watching the screen, her expression unreadable, but her eyes had shifted to a deep, molten gold. He didn't know what that meant, but he was pretty sure it wasn't happy. They're charging weapons, Ortega said quietly. Jack sighed. All right, so much for diplomacy. Davis whooped. Explosion time! The first blast rocked the ship hard enough to throw Jack from his chair. He hit the deck with an undignified grunt. Shields holding, Ortega shouted over the alarms. Barely. Return fire, Jack barked, hauling himself upright. Davis slammed the controls with more enthusiasm than precision. The horizon spat bright lances of energy back at the pirate ship, scoring deep burns across its hull. The pirate vessel twisted to avoid the worst of it, but it moved with the grace of a drunk space whale. Direct hit on their port engines, Davis crowed. They're listing. Let's make sure they stay that way, Jack said. Target their weapons next. Before Davis could fire again, the ship jolted violently. A new alarm howled, different from the others. Jack didn't like the sound of it. It had the kind of urgent, wailing tone that screamed, "You are going to explode very soon." What now? Jack demanded. Ortega's fingers flew over the console. They launched a boarding pod. It latched onto Deck 6. Jack swore under his breath. They're coming in. He turned to Lyra. Stay here. The bridge is secure. Lyra's expression didn't so much as flicker. I am coming with you. Jack opened his mouth to argue, but one look at her face, her eyes now burning like molten amber, told him it would be a waste of air. Fine, he said, but stay behind me. They moved fast, racing down the corridors as the ship groaned and shuddered under more pirate fire. Jack's boots echoed against the metal floor, his pulse hammering in his ears. Davis caught up, breathless but grinning, like this was the best day of his life. You think these guys know who they're messing with? Considering they're still shooting at us, I'm gonna say no, Jack muttered. They reached Deck 6 just as the boarding hatch hissed open. A rush of smoke and steam billowed out, and through it emerged the pirates, hulking figures in mismatched armor, bristling with weapons and bad attitudes. The leader was a mountain of a being, half cybernetics, half scar tissue. His one organic eye glared at them while the other, a glowing red implant, whirred and clicked. His voice came out in a metallic snarl. Give us the Alari! Jack stepped forward, raising his sidearm. See, the thing is, I've grown kind of attached to her. He glanced back at Lyra. No offense. Lyra's voice was cool as a winter moon. None taken. The pirate leader's mechanical eye focused on her. She's worth more than your ship, more than your crew. Step aside, human. Jack tilted his head. Yeah, that's going to be a no from me. The pirate's mechanical arm twitched. Jack saw the shot coming a split second before it fired. He dove to the side, the plasma bolt searing past him so close, he felt the heat brush his cheek. Everything exploded into motion. Davis whooped again, because of course he did, and fired wildly into the group of pirates. Ortega's voice crackled over the comm, calling for reinforcements. Jack took down the first pirate with a clean shot to the leg, sending the brute sprawling. Lyra didn't stay behind him. She moved like liquid moonlight, faster than Jack thought possible. One pirate lunged at her, and she ducked under his swing, twisting gracefully before slamming an elbow into his throat with a satisfying crunch. The pirate leader snarled, raising his arm to fire again. But Jack was faster this time. He shot the cybernetic limb, sending sparks and molten metal flying. The leader roared in pain and fury, staggering backward. Jack stepped forward, gun raised. Looks like your negotiation tactic needs work. The pirate stared at him, breathing hard. Then without a word, he slammed a fist into his wrist console. A second later, he and the remaining pirates shimmered and vanished in a flash of light. Teleporters, Davis muttered. Cowards. Jack lowered his gun. His heart was still hammering. He turned to Lyra, who was watching him with those molten eyes. Well, he said, breathless but grinning, welcome to humanity. Lyra exhaled slowly. Then to his surprise, she smiled. A real one this time, small but warm. I think I'm beginning to like it. The lights flickered overhead as the hum of the ship's systems struggled to reassert themselves after the pirates' abrupt departure. The air smelled like burnt circuitry and ozone, the usual perfume of "we almost died." Jack took a shaky breath, trying to decide whether to laugh or collapse. He settled for an exhausted grin. Well, he said, voice still a little breathless, I think that went great. Davis, leaning against the wall and inspecting a new scorch mark on his sleeve, snorted. Yeah, if your definition of great includes almost getting vaporized by space criminals. Details. Jack waved a hand dismissively. Nobody got vaporized and the pirates left empty-handed. I call that a win. Lyra tilted her head, her long ears flicking ever so slightly. Jack was starting to recognize it as her version of a raised eyebrow. They teleported away. That is not the same as leaving willingly. Jack sighed. Yeah, I was kind of hoping you wouldn't point that out. He straightened up, brushing off his uniform. All right, let's assess the damage. Davis, check the weapons array. Ortega, figure out if we're still on the pirates' Christmas card list. And Lyra? He glanced at her, not entirely sure what to assign her, considering she just elbowed a guy's throat into early retirement. She beat him to it. I will assist Ortega. Your ship's systems are inefficiently organized. Ortega raised a brow. Wow, harsh. Jack chuckled. Welcome to the horizon, where everything's held together by duct tape, hope, and Davis's questionable repair skills. Hey, Davis called from down the corridor. I only use duct tape when the other tape runs out. Lyra looked between them, her head tilting again in that fascinated, puzzled way. Jack was beginning to think she wasn't entirely sure if they were all brilliant or completely insane. Maybe both. They split up, leaving Jack to make his way back to the bridge. The ship groaned underfoot, metal plates shifting as if the horizon herself was grumbling about the fight. He gave the bulkhead a gentle pat on his way past. Hang in there, girl, he muttered. We'll get you fixed up. The bridge was quieter now, the chaos ebbing into that strange, hollow stillness that always followed a near disaster. Jack dropped into his chair and let his head fall back with a sigh. He barely had time to appreciate the moment of peace before Davis strolled in, holding what looked suspiciously like a protein bar. Weapons are mostly intact, he reported, unwrapping the snack with one hand. Port side's got some carbon scoring, but nothing we can't patch up. He took a bite and chewed thoughtfully. We are, however, almost out of coffee. Jack sat bolt upright. What? Davis nodded grimly. I know, it's a dark day for humanity. Jack groaned, slumping back in his chair. Great. We fought off pirates just to die of caffeine withdrawal. The door hissed open again, and Lyra entered, Ortega trailing behind her. Lyra's hair was slightly out of place, a rare sign of anything less than perfect composure. Your ship's comm relays are a tangled mess, she announced, as though this were a neutral observation rather than a scathing review. It's impressive that it hasn't spontaneously caught fire. Jack raised a hand. In our defense, it only caught fire that one time. Ortega shook her head, smirking. I managed to boost our sensor range, but Lyra's right. The wiring back there looks like someone let a toddler design a spaghetti recipe. I wasn't the one who routed the long-range scanner through the food synthesizer. Davis piped up, still chewing. That was before my time. Jack exhaled slowly, pinching the bridge of his nose. So what you're saying is, we're held together by duct tape, hope, and poorly designed spaghetti? Essentially, Lyra said, her voice completely deadpan. Jack blinked at her, then laughed. A surprised, genuine sound. He wasn't sure what was funnier, the joke itself, or the fact that Lyra was starting to make them. Lyra watched him for a moment, her expression softening. For a second, Jack could almost believe this wasn't a diplomatic mission, that they weren't light years from home with pirates on their tail. It felt normal, like they were just people on a ship, figuring things out as they went. That moment shattered when the console lit up with a high-pitched beep. Ortega lunged for the controls. We've got a problem. Her voice lost all trace of humor. The pirate ship's back. Jack stared at her. What? They jumped to light speed. Looks like they doubled back, Ortega said grimly. They're coming in fast, and they're not alone. 2 more ships just dropped out of warp with them.